Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before the previous hearing, I sent out letters to all 5 of the private housing companies that testified 2 weeks ago to get some more data and background information on what was going on. They have since provided my office with the requested documents that I'd asked for in this letter. And representatives from 3 of those companies have met with my staff to explain how their business model works. The companies summarized 600-page, complex, secret financial agreements into a single PowerPoint slide that clearly laid out how they actually don't make much money and they only receive their fees after setting aside money for operating and maintenance expenses. Meanwhile, they also claimed that because people don't have to live on base, they are properly incentivized to provide excellent service. If you believe the companies, it all makes sense on paper. The market works perfectly. They said, in effect, there's no problem. The incentives are all working. The market works. Nothing to see here. So let me just start by asking Secretary Spencer, Esper, and Wilson, do you agree that the housing market for base housing is working properly? Would you like to start? Secretary Esper?
Senator, clearly it's not working.
It's clearly not working.
I mean,
right?
we have too many problems. It's evidenced by what's coming out in our town halls and what this committee heard from the families sitting behind us. It's not working.
So we don't have any doubt about that. Secretary Spencer, you agree?
Totally agree.
And Secretary Wilson?
Agree.
All right. So the market isn't working as intended. We have to ask the question why it isn't working intended. And the basic idea behind what it takes for a market to work is there have to be rules and there has to be someone who's willing to enforce the rules. Last week, the Army personnel chief told us in a military personnel subcommittee that the terrible conditions in which military families have been living are a leadership failure, plain and simple. Do you all agree with that assessment, Secretary Esper?
Yes, ma'am. I think the chain of command over the past 20 years has slowly walked away from being involved in the housing of our soldiers and their families. Yes.
And everyone else agrees with this? I'll get you on the
That's
record
true.
there.
Senator, I think that there's more than that. I think that the financial incentives as they are structured do not incentivize the right behavior.
Okay, so you're saying you think both the contracts are bad, but let's just start with the enforcement part of this is also a problem, and that's a leadership problem. Is that right?
Yes.
Just want to make sure we're in the same place on this.
Leadership both in the military side and also the local leadership of the contractor.
Okay, but it's leadership on the military side that enforces. It's not the contractor that enforces.
One of enforcement, that is true, but we have where I would say that where we don't have problems at bases, local leadership and management quality really matter. And that is the biggest indicator of quality housing, is a good local manager by the housing contractor.
Fair enough, Secretary Wilson, but I just really have to bear down on this point. If no one will enforce the rules, then I understand exactly how incentives work. And the way incentives work is to improve your profits by not delivering the product that you promised to deliver. So we've got to look at both of these, the leadership on how we get enforcement of the rules and whether the rules themselves are adequate. And I take it from what you've already said, we have a leadership problem, but we also have a problem on the rules. Correct, Secretary Esper?
Yes, ma'am. I do want to make a good point, something the chief reminded me of, because we need to be fair to the chain of command here, too. There was an instruction given by civilian leadership in the 2013-ish time frame to say you are not responsible, that you should not conduct inspections of the homes. And so we've subsequently unwound that and are now giving different guidance to the chain of command to be involved.
Okay, but who gave those orders? I mean, we can talk leadership. Let's just move up a little. Somebody issued those orders, and it didn't come from the contractor.
An assistant secretary at the time did.
An assistant secretary of the Department of
the Army.
The Army.
Yes, ma'am.
Said, don't enforce the contracts, in effect.
No, it said do not, you're not responsible for conducting inspections of the housing.
But who was going to enforce the contracts?
Well, we completely agree, Senator.
All right. Okay. So there's the problem we've got. We need better rules, and we need better enforcement of those rules. I'm putting together a reform bill that will enhance oversight, protect tenants. I know we're working on a tenant Bill of Rights here. You know, the committee can put all of the right rules in place that it wants, but if the leadership doesn't enforce those rules, then at the end of the day, we're not going to be delivering for our military personnel. Enforcement, not just signing the contract, but enforcing the contract is absolutely critical. So I just want to dig down on one part of that and on some reports of potential fraud. The committee has received reports from military families who are being charged for things like carpet replacement upon moving out, but the carpets are not actually replaced. Do the services conduct any inspections when the houses are in between tenants to make sure that the providers are actually completing the work that they're charging the military families for? Do we know the answer to that, Secretary Esper?
I can't tell you right now, Senator, but I'll get you the answer. But I've heard the same thing, and I think going forward, one of the things I said earlier today is we want to have 100% quality control on any transition, moving in or moving out, because
Okay.
we've heard similar
If
reports.
someone's going to have to pay for it. Secretary Spencer, did you want to add to that?
It is technically, Senator, the housing office, the local housing office. Again, oversight, whether they do it or not, is now front and center.
Okay, so they have the authority to do it, they're just not doing it. And Secretary Wilson, did you want to add anything to that?
Senator, we do about a 10% sampling, so it is not a 100% look at the turnover time. I also would like to say that we take all indications.
I'm sorry,
of fraud.
you do 10% sampling. What have you found in your 10% sampling?
I'd have to get you the data.
Okay, whether this
by
is a
base.
problem or not. Okay, and what kind of follow-up you do if you
there's an
find out there's a problem?
If there is an indication of fraud, we take that seriously and turn it over to the investigators for fraud.
Okay. I appreciate that, you know, but I'll just say it again. Until we get some real enforcement on these rules, we can write all the rules we want here in Congress, but we got to rely on you folks to make sure they actually get enforced. Thank you.